Going on, YouTube family? We are back with another exercise rating video, and today we got the cake video, boys and girls. The cake video. We are doing glutes and hamstrings and exercises that people often do for these, and we're going to rate them from A to F. Number one glute and ham exercise we are rating is the barbell deadlift.
Barbell deadlift for the glutes. Not good. Maybe I'm going to give it a C. It's going to do some glute development, not a lot. And it really, if you're going to do deadlifts to build up your ass, there's so many better exercises. I mean, not that the deadlifts are bad, but if you're just wanting a big ass and you're doing deadlifts, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, deadlifts for me, for most aesthetic-based reasons, but specifically for glutes and hamstrings, an F. F for me, guys. And I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but I'm going to explain why. First and foremost is we are trying to drive as much hypertrophy for aesthetics training, for bodybuilding. So we're looking at that activation as compared to that risk profile. Deadlifts have an extremely high risk profile. You're going really heavy. You're trying to usually hit between 1 to maybe 8 reps, which is more conducive to strength. And sure, from a mechanical load perspective, like it's a great exercise for just like building overall bodily strength. But for hypertrophy specifically, it's like terrible because we are trying to isolate body parts and get them bigger and stronger and fuller. So if we're talking about glutes and hamstrings, I could think of 50 exercises that will better target those with a lower risk profile. So let's say even like a deficit RDL or a seated hamstring curl, all of these things, or a glute bridge or a Bulgarian split squat are all going to target these muscles with more efficacy with lower risk. So that's part number one. Part number two is just that you are inevitably chasing something that is not a one-to-one correlation. So sure, C-Bum deadlifts, but C-Bum isn't the Mr. Olympia Classic physique because he deadlifts. He's the Mr. Olympia Classic physique because of all the other exercises he does, and he has crazy genetic potential, crazy small waist, amazing muscle bellies. So there's insane quad sweeps that just don't even make any sense, and crazy like musculature there that is just God-given. So I think that there is this misconception that if you deadlift, you're going to look like C-Bum. If you deadlift, you're probably going to look more like Eddie Hall. If we're going to be 100% transparent, some of the best deadlifters in the world are some of the least aesthetic people on the planet. And the reason for that is because a lot of times weight moves weight and strength doesn't correlate with aesthetics. And that's just like the sad truth of it. So if you are deadlifting to try to build up your hamstrings, your glutes, your lower body, it's not going to happen for you. Focus on some of these other exercises we'll probably be talking about in this video.
Yeah, he was saying correlation does not imply causation. Just because you're doing the exercise and you have perhaps great hamstrings and glutes doesn't mean it's necessarily from that exercise. My hamstrings are my best body part, and I really don't train them anymore. And so in 4 years, I still have great hamstrings. I hardly ever train them. And so is it really because of the deadlift that I always did? I thought maybe, so I gave it a C, but maybe it's just because I was born with those genetics.
Exercise number two, very divisive, often seen as a female-oriented exercise. We have the barbell glute bridge. And we can talk barbell, but you can also do this on the Smith machine or, let's say, a glute bridge specific machine, plate loaded.
It's certainly very underrated for men, and for women, they love it. I'm giving it an A+. I think this is the exercise to do. I don't know why people aren't doing it. I don't know why men aren't doing it. Girls like an ass. Why aren't you building up your glutes? I even bought a machine just for the glutes. It's coming today, probably in an hour. I need this exercise. This is a must.
So I'm going to give the glute bridge for glute building an A, guys. It is such a great exercise. Shut up if you're out there as a dude like, oh, it's a chick exercise, just go deadlift. Like, hypertrophy does not select between male and female. Like, if it's a great exercise for girls, it's probably a great exercise for guys, and vice versa if girls are trying to build up certain areas. So what I would say is things to improve the effectiveness of your glute bridge is two things. One is increase the time under tension. Hold that contraction at peak contraction, and it's going to get you more time under tension where you're actually hitting the glutes the hardest. The other thing is to actually use a box for your feet. Even if you use the machine one, put a box under your feet and increase your range of motion. Really dig and stretch at the bottom of the rep. That increased range of motion is going to it's going to have more motor recruitment, it's going to induce more hypertrophy, and it's going to allow you to use maybe a little less weight. So I'd say stop throwing around 6, 7, 8 plates on each side for like 3 reps. It's not really going to build your glutes from a hypertrophic standpoint. It's going to build strength and maybe help you with your other strength exercises. But if you want to really grow your ass, do sets of 12, 15, 20, 4-second hold at the top, big stretch at the bottom. That's what's going to help you grow.
100% agree. And this is the #1 exercise that females ego lift on. In general, males, they ego lift more than women. This is, women are lifting more than I am. And I'm not saying I'm stronger than all the women, but they're not using the best technique. They're not pausing at the top. They're just throwing up the heaviest weight possible, and they're showing off. For women, this is their ego lifting exercise.
100%. Oh, the amount of girls I've say like, oh, yeah, I can glute bridge 5 plates. It's like, well, show me the clip. I want to see you get a hold and a negative on that with that much weight. So definitely something that is it's the female equivalency, I think, of the bench press.
Of the bench press, 100%.
Is the Bulgarian split squat for glutes and hamstrings.
Now, for glutes and hamstrings, I'm going to give this one an A. Even though I hate it. Now, remember, it's not for the quads. This is for glutes and hamstrings. This is a great exercise, especially for women or guys who are trying to build their glutes and you're training at home. This is something that everyone can do. But for me, I don't want to do it because it still hurts. But it's certainly, when I do it, I definitely feel it in the glutes and hamstrings. It really works that muscle out.
I'm going to have Safe put the clip from our last video where Greg rated the same exercise
A D.
for quads.
I hate it for the leg. I can think of so many. I'd rather do the leg press. Give me the leg press. I'm doing it for quads. Love it. But the split squat, oh, I just can't.
Bulgarian split squats for glutes and hamstrings. That is an A for me. An A plus for me. This is such a good exercise. Ways that you can make this exercise more comfortable for yourself. I know people absolutely abhor this exercise. What I would say is 2 things. One is I prefer it on the Smith machine. I think it's a really good way to control the weight without having to worry about falling. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I feel like I'm going to fall over, my hips are tight, yada, yada, yada. So if you can use the Smith machine, it's going to reduce one of those kind of hindrances from you feeling that the movement pattern has efficacy for you. The other thing I would suggest is moving the foot a little farther away for glute and hamstring engagement. I'm talking about that front foot away from the bench, because that's going to allow you to engage the glutes a little more. If you are closer, it's going to be a little bit more quad and glute focus, where you can move it a little farther away. We're going to still have some quads, but it's going to be more glute and hamstring driven. The other thing you can do is elevate that front foot. Lighten up the weight. So let's say you're doing it with 45s on there. Go down to like 10s or 25s. Put a 2 to 3 inch box on your front foot. That's going to allow you to get 2 or 3 inches deeper, which is going to increase the amount of stretch you're getting in that glute, in that hamstring, in that adductor, and it's going to drive more hypertrophy without having to use as much top end weight. Also slow down your reps. This is amazing exercise, guys. It's going to get you longer, more athletic. It's going to drive hypertrophy. It's going to make you feel better once you perform it in a correct capacity. A plus exercise for me.
Now, having heard you talk about how great it is for the quads and now the glutes and hamstrings, I mean, is this the best exercise for the legs?
I think this is the best compound movement for hypertrophic effect.
I mean, just
bodybuilding.
You've called it for legs, glutes. I mean, from your perspective, that's the best exercise of all time.
I think it is for hypertrophy focus, because we're talking longevity here too. It has the ancillary benefit of stretching out most people are tight through their hips, right? Which is also going to induce lower back pain. We're sitting all day, which is going to shorten that, your hip flexor, and that wraps around all the way through to your lower back, causes lower back pain, tightness. So this exercise, when done correctly and really stretching at that bottom position and holding that stretch, is going to have that ancillary benefit of actually stretching out your hams or your hip flexors, your adductors, and it's going to make you feel just more athletic in general. That's why a lot of athletic coaches use this kind of exercise for even explosive, even if they're not doing as much time under tension. This is something that they use for their athletes because it's such a good for glute drive, for quads, for basically everything to keep yourself athletic.
And so most people say that the squat is the king of the exercise for the legs. I think this is like the squat on steroids.
I think it is. And you guys are going to hate it, but
perhaps on SARMs.
Yeah, I'm like
on GO2 Max.
I was literally you stole it from me. This is
hamstring.
Oh, use more GO2 Max, bro.
I'm cramping up. We trained harder than last time yesterday.
Trained harder than last time.
Yeah.
The RDL for building your glutes and hamstrings?
I'm going to give it a B. I can't give it an A rating because I just don't like the exercise, enjoy it as much. I think that people do it wrong. I think it's harder to do. I think most people just try to lift too heavy of a weight. When I lift it, I use like a 60-pound dumbbells. That's all I'm using. But it does work, but I just don't enjoy the feeling so much. I don't think it's a great exercise for somebody with lower back pain. You might argue and say, well, no, it's the opposite, stretch it out. But for me, having like serious back problems like over the years, it's something I have to be very careful of. If I do this like to failure or really push myself, I'm very scared that I'm going to be out of the gym for several days.
Yeah, so I'm going to give the RDL for glutes and hamstring growth a B minus. I think it's a terrific exercise when done correctly. I think that, but we have to be true to our rating system of stimuli in relation to risk profile for hypertrophic effect. And at the end of the day, like any hip hinge movement under load is going to provide more stress on your lower back, on your spinal column than, let's say, a seated hamstring curl. So, which I would argue is going to give you a tremendous amount of engagement. So, a couple ways that you can make your RDLs safer and also induce more hypertrophy is kind of like along the lines of a lot of the technique tips I've given is do them in a deficit. So if you're going to do a Smith machine or a barbell, do it on a box so you can really reach down closer to your feet. Obviously within safety, go lighter, work on your hamstring mobility before you start to try to reach for your top of your shoes, because if your hamstring mobility and your glute mobility is really poor and you try to reach for your with almost straight legs, inevitably you're going to round your back to make it happen. So what you want to really keep a flat neutral spine, keep your eyes straight ahead. That's going to allow you to keep that nice flat back, even almost into a slight arch. So if you can't reach in that deficit while maintaining really good form, I don't think this is a movement pattern that you should definitely go heavy in at all. But I do think with proper form and training and practice, this can be closer to a B plus to A minus exercise when done in a deficit, when really reaching for the top of the feet, because it's really going to be a big compound with that you can use a little heavier weight to drive a lot of hypertrophy in the hamstrings.
From personal observation, coaching people, I find people use too much weight on this exercise and they end up rounding their backs so that they can get lower. And I'm like, if you don't have the flexibility, just don't think you have to get down to the floor. Don't round your back and stop trying to lift so heavy.
Yep, and the same thing with this exercise. If you do it correctly and you work on it over time, it has the ancillary benefit of stretching you, right? Because it's almost like a forced partner stretch where you are reaching for the top of your feet. And if you can go light and continually week over week get deeper and deeper and deeper in your rep with proper form, you're actually going to open up your hamstrings, open up your adductors, open up your glutes more and more, and it's going to allow you to feel better, perform better, and have better motor recruitment at that lengthened position.
It's kind of like PNF stretching or proprioceptive
Exactly.
neuromuscular feedback. I haven't said that word in probably 20 years, but it feels like you're stretching and forcing the muscle to stretch, to basically work hard while being in a stretch position. Just like somebody's pushing your leg down, you push against it, you get a lot more flexibility. Like yesterday, you're showing all these exercises, great exercise. I'm so stretched out. I'm feeling like, wow, this is amazing, getting so much more range of motion. So it really does feel like PNF stretching while lifting weights at the same time.
Yep, absolutely. Seated hamstring curl for hamstring development. We'll keep glutes out of this, but for hamstrings.
For hamstrings, I got to give it an A. I love this exercise. It's easy to do. The pin, you can drop set it. You can do forced reps. You can do everything. It's set, predetermined. You can set the seat. I have really short legs. I can put it down to the small size. No problem. Great exercise. Easy to engage the hamstrings. 100% recommend.
Yep. Seated hamstring curls for me is an A plus hamstring development exercise. The reason being is it puts you in a really mechanically advantageous position to drive as much tension into the hamstrings in an isolated movement pattern as compared to, let's say, a lying hamstring curl. Just because that pad is pressed on the top of your leg, you can press against those handles and really allow yourself to dig specifically into the hamstrings. Very safe to do a negative on these. Very safe to even get a stretch on the top. One pro tip I would recommend, if you're training with a partner, have them push down the pad, the foot pad that you're actually putting your ankles on, and then you put basically the pad that goes on the top of your quad down deeper, so at the top of your rep, you still have tension on the hamstring, so you actually never top out the exercise at the top of the rep, because it's going to give you more stretch median hypertrophy at the top of the rep. I have my training partner do it for me every time. I'll literally have him press it down. I put it down to the lowest position possible. So at the top of my rep, even if I were to stretch as much as I could, I still wouldn't bottom out that stack. And that's going to allow you to get that full range of motion, really dig underneath, and then stretch at the top.
And for me, it's such an easy exercise to learn. There's no real learning curve, like compared to, say, doing RDLs. That exercise, if you're watching someone, it's a little bit more dangerous. It's like the first day, a beginner, it's like boom, and you're in it, and it's working. So, I mean, I have to give it an A.
And let's finish out this with lying hamstring curls.
I'm going to give it a B, almost as good as the last exercise, but there is a little bit of problems with people getting their backs off the bench. They're just squeezing wrong. They're straining their arms, upper body. They're cheating the weight to get it up. So it's a little bit harder. It's a little bit easier to ego lift on this weight. So I would give it a slightly below rating versus the other.
Yeah, I'm going to give a lying hamstring curl a B-, and that's just because I have that reference point of the seated hamstring curl being such an advantageous exercise for hamstring development and isolation. And the reason is because from a mechanical perspective, you're putting yourself at a lesser ability to hold that weight really in the hamstring, because you're going to inevitably be able to take over with sometimes your lower backs, even your glutes, on a lying hamstring curl as opposed to seated. When you're really properly positioned with the pad really pressed down hard against your quad, it's very hard to take over with your lower back, almost impossible. So I think it's a B- because of the fact that it's still a great exercise, a very low risk profile. I just know there's a better alternative, probably sitting about 3 feet from it. So I just think for that reason I can't give it an A, even though it's good engagement, very low risk, very good ability to stretch. The only other reason I would give it a B- because that point I just made of stretch, I don't think you can stretch as much with the lying, because obviously inevitably you're going to usually flatten out the legs, hit the pad before you can really hit that fully stretched position in a lying hamstring curl.
Yeah, sounds good. We're on the same page here.
All right, guys, so that was our full breakdown of the top exercises for glutes and hamstrings. My titties are tittying at the end of this video. I love it. I get to see myself in this little screen. So hopefully I look as good on the big screen as the little screen. But thank you, Coach Greg, for this. If you're not subscribed to Coach Greg, go hop over to his page, buy his cookbook, get GO2 Max, do all the things, because this guy knows his stuff when it comes to supplements, when it comes to cooking. I'm actually eating all of my meals today from his cookbook, and it's off to an amazing start. I feel awesome. So thank you guys for watching this video, and we will see you guys on the next one.